After a very long wait, Volkswagen's pair of electric midsize SUVs are finally here. The ID.4, of course, we've got a separate video on that. Go and watch that. That's the sort of family option. But this one here, what really sets it apart, the ID.5, is the fact that it's exclusively available in this GTX trim, at least from the launch. What does that mean, and where does it sit in the hierarchy of EVs in our market? Well, keep watching and we'll find out. Now, at $72,990, this car isn't as competitively priced as its ID.4 Pro relation. But for that money, you are getting a slightly larger battery and a whole extra motor over the front axle for some more compelling performance specs. But it's not as crazy fast as some of its EV rivals in this space. Check out the figures for those in a sec.
First up though, let's talk rivals. Because of its price point, the ID.5 has a more specific array of competitors than the ID.4, and these include the slightly smaller Smart #3 Brabus, Mini Countryman SE, and Kia EV5 GT line. Now, value is a funny thing because while those aforementioned and more recently released cars are similar in their performance figures to the ID.5 GTX, this car still looks like great value when compared to something like the Toyota BZ4X, Hyundai Kona Premium, and Kia Niro GT line, which it is still also similar in price to. The fact that you can get a warmed over GTX version of this car compared to more tame versions of those somewhat older offerings is perhaps emblematic of how fast this electric car market is moving. Standard equipment is also reasonably impressive, with the GTX sharing much of its standard kit with the ID.4, and this means standard matrix LED headlights, 3D effect rear tail lights, a step up to 20-inch alloy wheels, and privacy glass in the rear seating positions. On the inside, you score a 12.9-inch multimedia touchscreen with the expected phone connectivity, a 5.3-inch digital instrument cluster, a panoramic glass roof, interior ambient lighting, tri-zone climate control, and the ID.5 in this GTX trim gets specific sports front seats, which still maintain the electric adjust, heating, and massage functions in the front two positions. It also gets a premium audio system and app connectivity features, and for convenience, VW also throws in a wall socket and a Type 2 to Type 2 charging cable. On the performance front, the GTX also obviously scores that second motor on the front axle, but it also continues to include adaptive chassis control with adjustable settings and VW's signature progressive steering tune as standard.
Now, obviously on the design front, the key difference between this car and the ID.4 is right here in the tailgate. It's got this sort of nice coupe descending roofline, which makes it a little bit more exciting to look at, particularly from this rear angle, but I actually quite like this integrated, separated spoiler piece. You don't really see these anymore. They're always like a lip or like a little thing that sticks out the top, and to have it down here in all three-dimensional, I reckon that's pretty cool.
Elsewhere, and just like the ID.4, the ID.5 sets itself apart from the rest of the Volkswagen range by leaning into curves rather than angles. And it also features a few new age design highlights like the contemporary light bars front and rear, flush door handle fittings, and big but aerodynamic alloy wheels. While its shape may be a little bit unconventional, its overall finish is very tidy, with a slick two-tone colour scheme and those tasteful highlights, which can set it apart from some of the more unconventional designs many of its rivals have.
Alright, in the cabin here, the ID.5 follows a lot of the same design trends as many of its rivals in this midsize EV space, and that's a minimalist, screen-focused trend. It's not even too different from the ID.4. There's not really anything that jumps out about it, apart from a bit of extra stitching and swapping out of silver trims for kind of gloss black ones to make it a little bit more angry feeling. I think the real highlight, though, is these seats. Again, the seats, just like in the ID.4, are really comfortable, really nice side bolstering, and it's a little bit extra in this one with the integrated headrest as well. It looks really cool, feels really good, nice and comfortable on the inside with some soft trims in the doors, despite the fact that there is a bit of a sea of hard plastics around elsewhere. And when it comes to practicality, there's a lot to say too, because firstly, you actually get a digital dash, unlike the Tesla Model Y. The screen isn't as nice as I'd like. There's not kind of anything in the way of physical buttons. It's just slide touches, and some of these shortcuts that run across the top and down the bottom here, they do take a little bit of fine motor control. So when you're trying to concentrate on the road, you have to grab the top of the screen and kind of jab at them. But it's nice that you can do that. And to be absolutely fair, it's fast and far from one of the worst systems that I've used on the market. So there you have it. Elsewhere for practicality, you've got large pockets in the doors that are good for my large coffee here. Another two in the center console, but the cool thing about this is that you can actually remove this whole thing, and you can use this as a tray, or you can place this whole thing down in the center console here and use this roller cover to sort of cover it up. So that is a really cool little bit of versatility in this cabin that not many rivals have. And it does feel really spacious too, because there's no kind of raised center console like you usually see. So it does feel, you know, airy, spacious, lots of headroom in this front position here. And this armrest too is a really nice touch, kind of rare, and again, necessary because you don't have that center console. So let's go have a look at the back seat. Okay, so the back seat is a real highlight in both this ID.5 and the ID.4 because it's really spacious, really makes the most of this MEB electric only platform because there's nothing interrupting your sort of space for your feet down here, so you can usefully put an adult in this middle position. Nice and wide, and the other thing I really like about this back seat is the contouring that's built into it, so you still get some side bolstering and you still get a nice amount of squish to it. So it's a really comfortable place to be for an extended period of time. Soft trims continue in the doors and on the back of the seats here, and when it comes to practicality, you've also got a large bottle holder in the doors. You've got a drop-down armrest, which has got a further several cup holders in there, and a ski port as well, which is really cool. You don't see that on every rival. Now elsewhere, and again what you don't see on every rival, is a third independently controlled climate zone, and there's 2 vents down there and 2 USB-C ports as well. However, I will say that just to reach those 2 vents, because they're so far down on the floor, there's no raised center console like there is on a lot of rivals, you really got to reach down and grab them, which might not be practical for everyone, small kids or older people who can't really reach down that far. So that's a bit of a shame, but other than that, I reckon this space is a real highlight, with the only other tight angle being this headroom. If you're any taller than me, I reckon it'd be just a little tight there. But other than that, spacious, nice, full of amenity, it's a good space.
Boot space is healthy for this mid-size segment, and despite the ID.5's coupe-style roofline, it has slightly more room than the more traditionally shaped ID.4. It also features somewhere to store your charging cables under the floor, but unfortunately there's no spare wheel in this instance, just an inflator kit.
Okay, so under the bonnet here, it's pretty hard to tell that this is different from the ID.4 Pro, which is only rear-wheel drive, because there is somewhere hidden under all this mess, which looks exactly the same as the ID.4 Pro, an extra electric motor. Now, it only adds 40 additional kilowatts for total system outputs of 250, but it does trim the 0 to 100 kilometer sprint time down to about 5.4 seconds. And again, that's not quite as fast as a lot of its more performance-oriented rivals, but importantly, I think it's about adding a little extra torque on that front axle to alter the handling. Now, the important thing about us Australians waiting for this updated version of the ID.5 and ID.4 is that we get better batteries and longer ranges for the versions that are sold here. Now, this is all-wheel drive, so it has less range than it might if it was rear-wheel drive, but the battery size also increases, which is kind of clever because it means the range only drops a little bit to 522 Ks compared to the rear-wheel drive ID.4. The other important thing about this update is charging speed. So it's increased to 175 kilowatts, which means you can charge from 10 to 80% in a little under half an hour, which is very competitive. And on AC, it's 11 kilowatts too, although there's no V2L this time around.
When it comes to energy efficiency, the ID.5 GTX consumes 17.1 kilowatt hours to 100 kilometers on the combined cycle, which is not bad, but also not great, and a reminder of the cost of adding all-wheel drive into the mix.
Okay, so ID.5 GTX. What's it like as an electric car, and how different is it from the ID.4? Well, the answer is not a whole lot different from the ID.4, if I'm being completely honest. Yes, this car has significantly higher power outputs. Yes, it's got a motor on the front axle, but it's not a radically different vehicle in terms of the way it feels. It doesn't have a lot of that extra punch that you might expect from just reading the raw numbers. It does sort of still feel like it's got that soft roll-on that the rear-wheel drive ID.4 has, and it still does feel like it's a little doughy when it comes to the suspension sometimes, although there is a little extra sharpness to it thanks to those larger wheels, which I do appreciate. It's also got a much more aggressive set of tyres on it, which is nice to have as well because it helps wrangle the weight of the car and it helps keep it a bit sharper in the corners. But again, those typical Volkswagen traits where the brand has traditionally excelled are there, so it's still got that really lovely steering tune. It's still got, like, overall quite a controlled ride, even though it is a little extra doughy with the weight of the batteries. I think as a daily driver, it's quite good as a performance car, a little bit maybe less what you might expect in this day and age from an EV, a performance-focused EV, but it's comfortable to drive around every day, and you can adjust those dampers quite a bit as well, which is a nice feature to have. But in particular, just don't expect it to have that breakneck acceleration, which I think a lot of people have come to expect from cars like the Tesla Model Y. It just doesn't have that. It's got a nice, soft, predictable roll-on. It's not as though it's a slow car. It's just not crazy fast like that GTX badge might have you thinking. But that's not to say it's not without its own appealing traits. Obviously, yes, you've got that dual motor all-wheel drive, but it's so rear biased that it is possible to be a bit cheeky and have a bit of fun in it. And that's not possible in quite the same way as this car's sort of predecessors, like a Tiguan or something like that, which is predominantly front-wheel drive. And that extra front motor does help keep things nice and tight in the corners and pairs so beautifully with this steering tune. So when it comes to overall handling as a package, that's where the traits of this car lie, rather than straight line performance. And I think that's interesting because a lot of rival EVs are more about that straight line performance and less about this more refined European handling. Now again, just like the ID.4, there are other traits about this vehicle that I quite like. It is really nice and quiet in the cabin. Again, can't be said for all this car's electric rivals. And the smoothness of it is much appreciated too. The ride is a little harder than it is in the ID.4, mainly because of the larger wheels, but on the whole, it is still quite a lovely car to spend an extended period of time in, and things that help that along too are the less invasive safety systems and the nice comfortable seats as well. Things I don't like so much that do eat into that driving experience over time are, I think, the touch panel features. You know, there is a lot of leaning forward, grabbing the top of the screen and trying to jab at small shortcut buttons, which can be quite distracting when you're on the move. And the same goes for that slider touch panel down the bottom. It would be much nicer to have physical dials, just so you don't have to concentrate so much on this screen while you're trying to keep your eyes on the road. So how do we sum up the drive experience of the ID.5 GTX? Look, it's not as radical as a lot of its rivals. It is a bit more safe in the way it's been put together, in the way the driving experience has been tuned, but I think it focuses on a lot more of the right areas where a lot of rivals are focusing on a lot of the wrong areas. Like, it is more refined than a lot of EVs. It does handle quite a bit more nicely than a lot of its rival EVs in this price bracket, and I think there's something to be said for that. Again, just like the ID.4, when it comes to active safety equipment, this car gets the full set. There's nothing on the options list, and that's really nice to see. However, the most important thing is how well it's calibrated, because as we know, like a lot of rivals on the market now, a lot of these safety features can be a bit make or break when it comes to actually living with one of these cars. And I'm pleased to report that the ID.5, just like the ID.4, is really nicely tuned. It's probably one of the best tuned active safety suites in this space of the market. Even things that are repeat offenders like lane keep assist, driver attention monitoring, they're just really in the background in this car and they don't interfere with the drive experience at all, and that's really nice to see.
The ID.5 holds a maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating, but at the time we shot this video, it was only applied to New Zealand delivered variants. The ID.5 is offered with Volkswagen's usual 5-year and unlimited kilometre whole car warranty, alongside 8 years and 160,000 Ks for the battery. VW also stresses the repairability of its battery packs and says supply will continue 10 years from the end of production of the ID.5, with repairability for at least 15 years. On top of that, servicing is only required once every 24 months or 30,000 Ks and is competitively priced, all things considered. As usual, the best service price is when you package it all up at the time of purchase, but over a 10-year period, it works out as low as $289 a year, which is excellent for a European car.
So there you have it, ID.5 GTX. It's a little bit of a different sort of performance SUV electric car pitch to a lot of its rivals, especially at the price point that it's at. And I think it depends on you as a buyer what you're looking for, whether it's sort of the handling package and overall vibe of this car or that straight line performance that a lot of its rivals go for. Tell us what you think. Would you pick one of these or an upcoming Tesla Model Y performance, or one of its high performance kind of rivals that might be coming from Kia or or even Hyundai, something like that? Tell us in the comments below. As always, remember to check out the full written review over at carsguide.com.au, where not only we have a written version of this review here, but also a video and written review of the ID.4 too.